Hey, what's up, you guys? My name is Grace Lauren Taylor, and you are listening to episode 74 of the Trauma Dump podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. Here at the Trauma Dump podcast, we seek to answer the question, what is mental health? How do I take care of my own, and how do I support others? This week, we're going to be discussing the topic of why police mental health matters with our very special guest of the week, Adam Meyers. Adam Meyers is a police captain, certified peer specialist, and mental health advocate from Wisconsin. With a career spanning over 2 decades, Adam served as a military policeman in the U.S. Army before transitioning to law enforcement in 2001. He has held roles such as police chief, detective, and instructor in officer wellness, communication, and tactical skills. In 2016, Adam experienced a life-altering critical incident where he used deadly force in a department store, which led to a profound personal and professional mental health struggle. His recovery has been made possible through the support of family, friends, colleagues, and counselors. Adam is the founder of Stop the Threat, Stop the Stigma, an organization dedicated to promoting law enforcement wellness and encouraging open conversations about mental health. With years of experience in behavioral health and a commitment to breaking the stigma, Adam speaks nationally and internationally about mental health challenges in law enforcement. So, please go check out Stop the Threat, Stop the Stigma on Facebook. I'll be putting the links in the description. And remember, if you'd like to share on the podcast, please message us in our Discord and the podcast participants channel along with your unique experiences, and we will match you to the right episode. And just a quick disclaimer before we start, I am not a licensed health professional. This podcast only seeks to create community and further understanding of these topics that are really so often overlooked and extremely misunderstood. If you or a loved one are in need of medical professional help, we have resources in our descriptions. The topics discussed here are for a mature audience, so viewer discretion is always advised. And if you're liking what we're doing here over on the Trauma Dump podcast, please don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more amazing content. We post new episodes every Sunday at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. And if you're really liking this podcast, please share it with your friends. And if you're listening to us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please rate the show. That also helps us reach a wider audience. All of your support is greatly appreciated. All right, let's get into this episode. Hi, Adam. Welcome to the podcast. How are you doing today?
Good, Grace. Thank you for having me. I appreciate you giving me this opportunity to talk about a really important topic.
Yes, exactly. I'm really happy to have you on. This is the first time that I'm having a law enforcement officer on my
Okay.
podcast. I'm really excited about it. Could you briefly share who you are and what we're going to be discussing today?
Sure. My name is Adam. I'm currently a police captain in Wisconsin. I've been a police officer for 23 years. I'm a father of 2 daughters, 22 and 26 years old. Um, and I'm also the founder of Stop the Threat, Stop the Stigma. And what that is I established Stop the Threat, Stop the Stigma in hopes to inspire law enforcement professionals and others who work in the public safety profession to speak about their mental health. I just share my experience. I'm very transparent, open, and honest about things. And I hope that by doing that, it reaches at least one person and helps them or helps somebody who wants to help somebody who's struggling with mental health, because it's okay to talk about your mental health. You're not alone. You don't have to suffer in silence. There's so many resources out there. So that's why I'm truly blessed to be here today.
I'm really happy to have you on as well. I'm so excited. Um, Before we start the podcast, I like to give the disclaimer to my listeners. I'm not a mental health professional. I'm just a person who's experienced trauma. So this is just an open and honest conversation to help other people be able to have these mental health conversations so we don't trauma dump on each other. Are you, Adam, comfortable with discussing your personal experiences?
100%. I'm an open book. And I think the reason why I am is because number one, I'm okay with it. And number two, I know that being open and honest and not sugarcoating things, that really helps people. I mean, for example, you could talk about how, somebody abuses alcohol. Well, that's different to everybody. I tell you exactly how I did that when I was poorly coping. So absolutely.
Awesome. Please feel free to interrupt me at any time if you need to, or if you need to take a break, feel free to. My priority is to make sure that you feel safe and comfortable at all times when discussing mental health and these traumatizing circumstances. So, could you give me a bit of how your journey from being a U.S. Army military policeman transition to becoming a police captain? Because I'm really interested about that. I don't know how any of that works.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's start in the beginning. When I was a really young boy, I always wanted to be a police officer, and I lived on Highway 20, which was Washington Avenue in the city of Racine in Wisconsin, and one of the main thoroughfares in and out of the city. So every time I would hear a siren fly by the house, I'd run up to the window, look outside, and hope it was a police car because that's what I was mostly interested in. But sometimes fire engines, ambulances. But so when the police car went by, I always said, "Ooh, an car," because that's kind of the siren, that a police car makes, car. So my parents tell me the first time that I saw a police officer get out of an car, I looked at them and it's like, an car man. I want to grow up and be an car man. So throughout my life, I just took the necessary steps that I thought, stay out of trouble, graduate from high school, go to college. I joined the Army because I wanted to be a police officer in the Army. And I did that. And then when I got out, I was lucky enough to be hired by the city of Racine, my hometown. It was great, born and raised, and now I get to protect the community that I love so much. And then I got married and had two children. I'm divorced now, but got married and had two children, and then we moved up north. And we moved up into a community up north that had a smaller population, and we did that to kind of get back to basics as a family, which was great. But in 2016, I was involved in a critical incident. I used deadly force on someone who armed themselves with a hatchet inside our Walmart. And what happened was, is this person was a patient at a state mental health facility, and she was out on a leave, a good behavior leave, and went to a restaurant with two of her chaperones, and then went into Walmart. And when it was time for her to leave, she didn't want to do that, and she walked back to the sporting goods section and she ripped open a hatchet from the packaging and then started walking and threatening customers and damaging merchandise. So I ended up responding to that call and made contact with her, and she turned around and faced me and just came right at me. And I gave her multiple verbal commands to stop, to drop the hatchet. She wouldn't do that, and I had to shoot her twice. And she did die many hours later. And that's something that stays with me forever. Every day I think about it one way or another. I mean, it's at the time she was a mother to a 6-year-old daughter. She's somebody's daughter, somebody's friend, cousin, granddaughter. So it's a big deal to me. It's not something I ever wanted to do in my life. I knew that was a possibility, like when I joined the Army or when I became a police officer, but throughout the years, I always prided myself with being able to talk people down and not using force. I mean, I never even pepper sprayed anybody. I've never used my baton on anybody. But under those circumstances, I had to shoot her. And I don't regret it. I don't second guess myself. And under the same circumstances, I would do it again. But it really was a tragic day. And it was a Friday afternoon, 5:15 at Walmart, hundreds of people in the store, super busy. Um, so it was a dangerous situation, and it was just tragic for everybody involved.
I agree, and I'm very sorry that you had to experience that. And
Thank you.
a lot of people, when they discuss police having to use deadly force, a lot of people feel anger, resentment, um, And from my perspective, I don't want to ever try to bring politics into the podcast because politics has really nothing to do with trauma. Trauma is a universal experience. Everybody will experience a trauma in their lives.
Right.
But from my perspective, I think it's amazing that you have the insight to say, I didn't want to do this. This was like I'm I did this because I had to protect myself, number one, protect others, number two, because police are supposed to protect and serve. And I really want to thank you for your service and also um, say that it's incredible that you have that insight. And it sounds like you investigated into who this person was and you feel deep remorse for what had happened. And I want to ask you, once deadly force was applied and this woman passed away, what were the steps that you took to learn about who she was and um, what led to this incident occurring? Why did you even feel the need to?
That's a good question, Grace. So this happened on a Friday, and the following morning, I had the day off. I had the whole weekend off because that's just what you do. You get a couple days off, and then they open an investigation into the shooting. And I remember I was about to leave my house, and my chief called me and asked me if I could come in and talk to him. And I was like, "Well, I'm going to go get my daughter, get my hair cut." I was going to do a couple things because I wanted to have some kind of normalcy after what had just happened. And he told me on the phone, he goes, "I really didn't want to tell you this over the telephone, but I want to tell you this, that she passed away." And right then and there, I thought to myself, this changes everything. I took somebody's life. I killed somebody. And the reason why my chief did that was because he didn't want me to find out through social media or the news. He wanted to tell me, as soon as he possibly can. So I appreciate that. And um, through that investigation, I found out that, she did have a history of violence throughout the years, but she also struggled with mental health challenges. Um, and then that's when I also found out that she was a mother and her daughter was 6 years old. And at the time, my daughters were young, so that hit home. And I have other family and friends that have younger children, and having to shoot her and protect myself and other people, it's not something I take lightly. I know that by pulling the trigger, I changed my life. I took hers. I changed so many people's lives in that store, probably even people that I've never even met. People who were there that say, "Hey, this one Friday I was at Walmart and oh my gosh, the police were there and shot somebody." I mean, that's even if they weren't directly involved, that's traumatizing for someone. But what I did was I started looking online and, seeing her parents' Facebook pages. And it was sad because when I was reading through some of the posts, everything that's involved when you lose somebody, if it's related to a police shooting or not, you have to prepare for the funeral and everything like that. And it seemed like it was really challenging for the family because they didn't have the funds to do that and the funds to bury their daughter. And that's sad. I mean, my shooting happened in 2016 and, we're going on 9 years coming, this coming April. And I really pray to God that someday I can meet her mother. I hope that I can sit down with her family. And maybe maybe they'll never want to. And I know it won't be easy. And I'm getting that tickle in my throat, like I'm about to cry now, but it's just, I, part of me, I want to do that because I think that would be helpful for the healing process. I'm not this big monster. I wasn't going to work that day hoping that I would do that or that I would ever do that when I started my career in 2001. And um, I hope that someday that I can meet, her mom or dad or family. I mean, even if they are willing to do that, but it was just by looking into like her history and learning more about her and some of her challenges with mental health and some of the family things that I learned, it it affected so many people. It wasn't just one-sided. It wasn't all about me. I'm selfish. It's all about me. No, there's hundreds of people that it affected. And it's a really big deal and a very tragic day.
And I completely agree. And I'm still in awe by your ability to have so much empathy, not only for the other people who have been impacted by this occurrence, but also for the family of her. Do you consider her a victim?
I think so. Yeah. Um, Part of me feels like she's because of her mental health, part of me feels like she's a victim of the system with mental health. And I've met people, after the shooting, I had to see a psychiatrist and make sure I was mentally clear, and I spoke with other people and other law enforcement officers who knew about her history, and it just seemed like the system failed her. It really did. Um, and it's a tragedy. It's very unfortunate.
Mhm. What were the immediate challenges that you faced after the incident, both personally and professionally?
Well, there's been a lot of challenging personally and professionally over the years, especially with my mental health. Almost immediately I met with a counselor, peer support counselor, and they told me, all the right things to do. Eat healthy, don't use alcohol, don't do this, don't do that. And did I listen? No, I thought I knew what I was doing. I didn't have to listen. I was good, but I wasn't. One of the biggest things that I did was I abused alcohol. I suffered in silence for years. I abused alcohol. And what I mean by abusing alcohol is I would, like right here, I have a vodka bottle, 750 milliliters, and I would drink this whole thing in 30 minutes or less and black out, pass out. I was basically a drunk. On my days off, I would drink. Not only would I, drink liquor because it got me where I wanted to go quicker, but this was a simulated wine glass, and what I would do is I would pour wine in here, and then I'd pour NyQuil, I'd pour, other cold and flu medicine in there, and just kind of numb my feelings. And even one time it went as far as reaching into the medicine cabinet, and I took my oldest daughter's prescribed medication. She had a cough, and there was, and had the flu or was sick, and that medicine had codeine in it. So I poured that into my wine glass too, and that's what I mean by abusing alcohol. I just didn't have a couple shots of liquor or a glass of wine. I abused it. I made my own cocktails. I slept the day away. So I didn't do laundry. I didn't do the dishes. I didn't cut the grass. I didn't care. I gained a lot of weight. I didn't exercise. I ate fast food, and I gained a significant amount of weight. Another thing that I did was I coped negatively through casual sex. I would meet women online, specifically for having sex. And for me, sex is good. It feels good. And but after doing that for a while, I didn't like who I was becoming. I literally remember laying in bed with a woman after we had sex, and then I'm thinking to myself, what are you doing, Adam? This isn't you. This isn't working for you. And with that, I would even be stressed. What if I get her pregnant? What if I catch an STD? But that still wasn't enough for me to stop. I wanted to numb my feelings. I wanted to have that quick fix. And after a while, it didn't help. I tried marijuana for the first time. I always prided myself. I never did any kind of drugs. Um, and nobody believed me when I told them that. No, I've never even tried marijuana. But after my shooting, I did. I tried a gummy and I smoked on a bowl. And at the time, I did not care. I wanted a quick fix. I wanted to feel good. I wanted to find the next thing that would make me feel good. And it did nothing but cause me, more stress, more anxiety, more depression. And, I wear this vest right here. It's a tactical vest, and we have these patches. I'll take this off, and here's another patch. It says police. and it says anxiety, depression, and stress. That's the stuff you don't see. You don't see with cops. You might see them on the street and they look all tough and intimidating, but we got all kinds of stuff going on. And it's okay to talk about it. It's okay to get help. And I really hope that more officers and first responders would do that.
You talk a lot about the ways that you tried to cope and it led to abusing these substances. Um, from your perspective, do you think a lot more officers become maybe worse versions of themselves because of shootings in the line of duty? And then this leads to them abusing these things and then abusing others?
That's a possibility. Absolutely. It's all connected. Your mental health, your physical health, your personal mental health, your professional mental health, it's all connected. And it's so important for police departments, for fire departments, for any first responder when you go through a traumatic event to get help so you don't go down that road. There's just so much going on, and it's okay to reach out for help. And if you notice somebody struggling, let's say you're a loved one, you're a spouse, you're a sibling, and you know your first responder, your police officer, your firefighter, your favorite person is struggling, even if you don't know what's going on. Just say, hey, I care about you. I love you. I don't know what's going on, but if you need somebody, I'm here. I can help. And if I can't, we'll walk together and get you some help. But there's so many people that they don't know what to say, they don't know what to do, so they don't get involved. And I understand that because I used to be that person. I remember in my younger years, it's like, well, I'm not sure what to do, and I don't want to look bad if I'm involved in this, and so I'm just going to do nothing. That nothing could lead to somebody dying by suicide because they feel like they have no other choice. And then it's too late.
I think it's really important to, when we talk about people who are in positions of power, because officers are in an elevated position, a lot of stigmatizing language around that contributes to them not wanting to ask for help or feeling like they're the ones that are supposed to create the solutions to the problems. And then when they have the problem, they don't want to burden other people, or they don't want to look or appear to be weak or less than.
Absolutely.
How do you help other officers let go of their ego when it comes to asking for help when it comes to mental health?
Well, the only thing I can say is that I got another patch, and I see a therapist. Every Monday at 5 p.m., I'm sitting on the couch talking to my therapist. Why? Because it helps me. It's okay. And another thing, I take medicine. My routine is, maybe this is too much information. I wake up in the morning, I roll out of bed, I go to the bathroom, I take a 20 milligram Lexapro, I take a multivitamin, and I'm good. Let's start the day. Have some coffee, giddy up, you know? I mean, it's okay. It helps me. And I think it is, like you said, it is that stigma that's associated with that. I remember earlier in my career, I was an evidence technician on third shift, and there was a triple homicide. 7 people were shot, 3 died. And I think it was several weeks after that, the police officer support team drove around and asked us how we were doing. Well, I was a new officer. I think I was even still on probation or very close after getting off, and I was doing okay. I wasn't having nightmares. I wasn't having flashbacks. I was fine because I helped process a scene because I was an evidence technician. But even if I wasn't, there was no way I was going to tell this member of the police officer support team that I was struggling. There's no way in heck. I just wouldn't do it because I finally became a police officer, my lifelong dream. I love being a cop. I'm a cop from my hometown. And even if I was struggling, I wouldn't have told this officer, yeah, I have nightmares and I don't know if I can do this. No, I would have kept it internally and I wouldn't have said anything. So I understand how that stigma is very, very strong and how police officers and first responders want to appear tough and don't want to appear weak to the people they work with or the public because they're worried about their livelihood. They're worried about losing their job. And it's after years and years and years of training, especially with me, they think, what else am I going to do? All I know is being a cop. All I know is being a firefighter. What other job am I going to do? So they keep it quiet and they try to cope, in their own way, and it doesn't work. It doesn't help.
I think one of the best ways to cope with trauma is having a community, having a support system. And it is what so many of us lack more. It's becoming more and more apparent to me and to other people is that we don't have enough of a community where we can rely on other people and have them rely on us as well and let it be mutual and beneficial. And the way that I was raised was that the police are here to keep the community safe. And even as a young kid, we were learning Russian because our parents wanted to adopt a little girl from Russia.
Well, that's cool.
And so one of the first things that I learned was полицейские, which means police in Russian. And
Okay.
even to this day, when I'm like walking, I'll like, "Привет, полицейские," like as a cop car is driving by. And I'm so grateful because I grew up in a mixed race household. I'm so grateful that my family respected police officers and wanted to encourage us as children to have a positive response to police, that they're there to help, that they're not scary. But sadly, there are so many different communities that don't see it that way because they've been disenfranchised, or the police in their community are not people that they can rely on, or there's so many different factors. And so I know because of my community that I'm building with this podcast that so many of them will be shocked that I'm having a policeman talk about his experiences, but I want to let them know that anything that they're feeling is valid. But the
Mhm.
whole purpose of this podcast is to let everyone talk about mental health. And that is the only way we can end stigma about mental health, is letting the door be open to anyone to come and share their experiences, whether we agree with them or not. Everyone's experiences are valid, and it's
Absolutely.
important to be kind, not only to yourself, but to others. And I bring it back to ask, when have you ever dealt with someone who has had negative police experiences and wants to dismiss your trauma or say that you deserve that trauma?
I haven't experienced that face to face, but after my shooting, there was a lot of stories on social media and in the news where you can post your own comments. And there were a lot of people that said, you signed up for this, this is what you deserve. And even when I started speaking about my experience in 2019, I get responses from people saying, you have no reason being a cop. With your mental health, you shouldn't be a cop. You shouldn't carry a gun. I pass psychological evals. I go to therapy. I take medicine. I'm so much more healthier now than I ever have been. And, I have an example here, if I could read it briefly. A lot of people don't realize that after a shooting, you do get hate mail. I mean, this is a copy of hate mail, and it was sent to me with no return address and no signature. And it basically says, "Hey to the murderer cop. What the hell is your big, strong, armed, trained, macho man bastard serving the community policeman doing shooting and murdering a 25-year-old young lady in a Walmart? Throw some socks at her, or a chair, or a few pillows, or a bicycle, or some pepper spray. You son of a bitch, murderous cop. I hope a DUI driver shoots you." And I got this in the mail, and I admit I'm an emotional guy and I dwell on certain things. And I remember when my chief got it, he briefly showed it to me. He didn't let me read it, but he said, you're getting hate mail. And when you're ready to read it, I'll let you, but I'm not going to let you see it now because I know how you are. And I'm grateful for that because I am. I would read that and be like, oh my gosh, that's not me. I'm not a bad person. I'm not this. I'm not that. And deep down, I know that, but when you receive something like this at your place of work, it's it's horrible. It makes me want to cry now because this is so not me. And um, but I did. I received negative comments on social media for many years after my shooting. Someone or multiple people would create fake social media accounts and send me messages around the anniversary of my shooting. Um, to say negative things. And then when I would look into it, I could see the account was just created. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people that do that, and this isn't easy. Even talking to you today, Grace, it's not easy. It is triggering. Afterwards, I might be really, really hungry because of the stress, but it's so important, and all that is not enough for me not to do it. And this is also therapeutic. It helps me learn more about myself and get the word out to help other people. And that's truly what it's all about.
I agree and I appreciate that. It's okay to cry here on the podcast. I cry sometimes. I have had
Yeah.
many different guests cry as well. It's good for you. We embrace all of the emotions and we allow ourselves to feel them because when we suppress them, when we bottle them up, that's when your body will like do everything in its power to make sure that you feel them. You were
Right.
talking about previously that you had gained a lot of weight from the amount of stress and the way that you chose to cope. Um, and it resonated with me as well because I experienced pretty significant trauma and I didn't eat a lot, but my body chemistry really did change. I gained like 58 pounds in 1 year. Nothing, my activity did not change. My eating habits didn't change. My body just was like, we're under stress. We need to hold on to all of this so that, say, that's what your body does when it's going through so much stress. Your body's like, oh my gosh, there's a famine, and it wants to hold on to all of the fat cells and everything like that. And so many people don't recognize that you, as a police officer, are a human. You have human experiences, you have human emotions. Everything that's happening to you is going to affect you one way or another. And police and EMTs and firefighters, these public servants experience such high levels of trauma and traumatic experiences on the daily, maybe even on the hourly, and we don't give them enough credit for what they experience. And I really do feel like we don't give them enough grace for the ways that they're coping with what they're experiencing. And I did some research for this episode, and only in about 2018 was the Law Enforcement Mental Health and Wellness Act actually signed into law,
Mhm.
which recognizes that law enforcement agencies need and deserve support in their ongoing efforts to protect mental health and well-being of their employees. Like, that's crazy that it was only signed into law in 2018, which is 2 years after your incident.
Right.
That's so sad,
Yeah.
in my opinion, that it took so long for us to be consciously aware of, like, oh my gosh, do the people that serve and protect, do they actually need to be served as well? Do their mental health concerns need to be taken seriously? It's devastating, and so many police officers do take their lives.
Mhm.
So many people in the army, veterans, do take their lives after what they have experienced. And it is a real epidemic. It is a real crisis that so many of us don't recognize. And I want to ask you about your advocacy. You have a business called Stop the Threat, Stop the Stigma. Could you tell me more about what that is?
Absolutely. Stop the threat, stop the stigma. I established that to promote law enforcement wellness in hopes that by speaking about my experience, it'll inspire other law enforcement professionals, those who work in the public safety profession, first responders, really anybody, to talk about their mental health, to let them know that it's okay to talk about your mental health. You are not alone. Please don't suffer in silence. There's so many resources out there. I mean, you don't have to get on the Trauma Dump podcast like I'm doing today and telling you my whole story and being as transparent as me, but if you know one person, if you're struggling and you know one person that you can confide in or to vent to or to communicate back and forth with text messages that you trust, please reach out. You're not alone. There are so many people that are going through what you're going through or that have gone through and made it through and are willing to help you. There's probably people out there that care about you and love you that you don't even know and that would bend over backwards for you. Um, and on another note, if you know somebody who's struggling, please reach out to them. Nowadays, technology is great for those things. I mean, if you can't speak with somebody face to face, send them a text message, send them an email, send them an Insta-chat or all kinds of other stuff and say, hey, you doing okay? I care about you. I love you. If you need something, let me know. That takes what, 10 seconds? We're on our phones all the time anyways. You can't shoot a text message to somebody. So, and it really means a lot to somebody who's struggling. And so with Stop the Threat, Stop the Stigma, Stop the Stigma is kind of, everybody knows what that is for the most part. And I believe there's always going to be a stigma. It's getting better and it'll continue to be better. But the Stop the Threat part is the threat is not getting help, not reaching out. The threat is losing your job. The threat is losing your life or losing somebody that you love. Part of the logo on Stop the Threat, Stop the Stigma has a police officer with a gun to their head. And I have a simulated gun here. It's plastic. There's no working parts. But I easily put my gun to my head a dozen times when I was intoxicated and when I was suffering and poorly coping. And what I would do is I remove the magazine and rack the slide to remove the bullet inside. But I would put it to my head and I would pull the trigger. And I never wanted to die by suicide, but I just wanted to hear that metallic click, to pull the trigger. And I really don't know why I did that. A lot of people said, well, maybe you were just kind of prepping yourself for doing it, but I didn't want to die, but I did it when I was intoxicated. So how many times did I do it when I was blackout drunk? I very well could have maybe accidentally forgot to remove the bullet and accidentally died by suicide. I would be dead. But that's why it's so important to reach out to people and let people know that you're there and let people know that you care, because it is doom and gloom. It is when you're depressed and you feel like nothing really matters, to have that one person there, that really means a lot.
Talking about your community and the people that have supported you, could you share a bit about your friends, your family, and the counselors that played a role in helping you navigate your mental health journey?
Oh, absolutely. My mom and dad, Walter and Susan Meyers, my sister Amy. My sister Amy helped me get back into therapy. After I was terminated from my job, I moved into the basement with her. I wasn't living in the basement at my mom and dad's, but living in the basement at my sister's. But I was off medicine. I wasn't going to therapy, and she saw that. And behind my back, which I'm blessed she did, she was looking into different counselors, and because of her, I got back into counseling, and because of her getting back into counseling and then becoming a police officer again, I knew I needed to go back to counseling, but I wasn't going to take that step. And another person that was very significant in supporting me and everything after my shooting was my chief at the time. And almost immediately he gave a release to the media and said, I support Officer Meyers. And when I saw that online, I printed it out. And it meant so much to me that I actually put it in this frame and set it on my desk because when you know your chief supports you, when you know your boss supports you, you could be having a crappy day, but that's so important. And he was real because I heard him supporting me and defending me when he didn't know I was there. I could have been around the corner. So it wasn't BS. He was being honest. And that really means a lot. And my current chief, Sean McGee, he's great. When he hired me where I work now, we have a lake patrol at the police department. We were out on the boat and he goes, I know that you speak about mental health. I support you 100%. If you want to continue to speak, go ahead. You can even wear your uniform if you want. And I'm like, wow. I probably won't, but I was just like, wow, this really means a lot. So, and I'll just finish with, I mentioned, to a lot of people, complete strangers supported me. And what I mean by that is when I went back to work, I would bump into people on certain calls and they would recognize me. Are you the officer that was involved in the shooting? And I would say, yeah, kind of reluctantly because I didn't know where they were going with it. And they told me, you know what? We prayed for you. We were praying for you at our church. You were in our thoughts and prayers. And can I give you a hug? And I'm like, absolutely, because I'm a hugger. So I'm like, yeah. And I'm like, wow, I don't even know this person. But yet they were thinking about me. They were praying for me. They wanted me to be okay. So that's what we need to do. You talk about your community, I talk about mine, and in law enforcement, it's so much more than writing tickets and arresting people. It's about working together, growing together. Um, that's what it's all about. Working together to keep the community safe and cheer each other on and support each other when we're struggling.
I fully agree that we do need to support one another when we are struggling. And even when we're not struggling, to have that consistent calling in, to checking in on how you're doing and making that a routine of making sure that you're constantly checking in with each other, showing empathy for one another, showing compassion for one another, and supporting each other. And a lot of people, it's a buzzword now. How can I support you? Like, what can I do for you? We need to take it a step further from that, of having that action of you. When we ask, oh, how can I support you? You're leaving a lot of the responsibility on the other person who's going through a significant period, usually of like, I don't know what to do. So we need to find the places where we can fit and help. So, for example, for those listening that, like, I don't know how I can support someone struggling, bringing them a meal,
Yeah.
inviting them to go do something with you that's fun, that's like outside of their home, or even coming to their house, bringing them flowers, whether it's a guy or a girl. Guys deserve flowers too. Bringing them flowers, bringing them some treats, taking them to do a fun activity that maybe isn't outside of their house, maybe taking them to the park. Make an effort to show up for another person, especially a person who's going through significant loss or a significant trauma, can mean all the difference, because it's a actual thing that you're doing, not just words. Because from my experience, what I found when I was going through a lot of trauma was that a lot of people were like, hey, what can I do for you? Let me know if there's something I can do. And I felt a lot of overwhelm
Mhm.
about, I don't know what I'm allowed to ask
Yep.
of this person. I don't know what is okay. I had that fear of rejection of, if I actually ask for what I need, is if they're not going to fulfill it, I'm going to feel like a shitty person because I'm asking for too much.
Mhm.
So for those listening, if you feel the call to help another person, let it be in an action, not just in words. Words are great, but like back up those words with an action. That really, really does help.
Yeah.
What are your goals for the future of Stop the Threat, Stop the Stigma?
Well, great. So I just want to continue to do what I'm doing now and in hopes that it reaches one additional person and another person. And um, I just truly want to help people because I never knew this was going to happen to me. And I didn't know I was going to be affected by it. It's been almost 9 years and I still have good days and bad. I don't, cope poorly like I used to. I found healthier ways to cope but still it never goes away. It's something that lives with me every single day. I'm just, I guess you could say, more used to it and know what my triggers are. And I want to share that with other people. I'm willing to talk to anybody who's willing to listen. And you don't have to be law enforcement. You don't have to be a first responder. It doesn't matter where you work. It doesn't matter if you're unemployed. I, all of us, I think, is going to go through a traumatic experience sometime in our lives. And if we don't, we're going to know somebody who does. And my main thing is I just want everybody to know that it's okay to talk about your mental health. You're not alone, and please don't suffer in silence. There's so many resources out there. There's so many resources out there. And if you don't know what those resources are, just ask. Go online, start looking around. And if you can't do that, like I said earlier, reach out to somebody you can confide in and say, even if you don't get it, say, I just feel off. I don't know what's going on. I don't feel like myself. I think I need help, but I don't know what to do. That's a huge first step, and that's what needs to be done. And it's not easy to do, or more people would do it. But I just hope by sharing my experience that other people will be inspired and choose to do the same or choose to help others who are struggling.
What message do you hope to leave with our listeners, especially those in law enforcement or a first responder role?
Everybody's different. Everybody's life is different. Doesn't matter where you live. You mentioned Russia. You can live in Russia. You can live in Germany and Australia or Canada or United States. And I've spoken with so many people, in the United States and even in Canada and even in Europe. And we are different, but there's so much that we're the same. We have so much similarities that if we just learn from each other, we're really not that different. I got messages from an officer in Germany, from an officer in Australia, and they're talking about the exact same thing with mental health that I went through. They could understand some of the things that I was going through, and vice versa. And I'm like, wow, they live what, 1,000 miles away? So we're not that different. We have a lot more similarities than we do differences. So please, if you're struggling, reach out, try to get some kind of help. It's not easy, or everybody would do it. It's not easy, or I would have done it years ago because, hey, I know myself. I can handle it. I can take care of myself. No, I'm not a professional in that area. I needed help. And that's the biggest thing, is to swallow your pride and reach out and get that help that you need. That's really, really important to moving forward and getting healthier.
What does wellness look like for you today, and how are you able to maintain it?
I like to walk. I mean, I didn't walk like Sunday. I walked 5.5 miles. I go on these long walks, put my earbuds in, and which is good because I get out. I'm not like stuck in the house. I get out and I do a lot of thinking, process a lot of things while I'm listening to my 1990s hip hop music. I love it. But I go walking a lot, and that burns calories. That makes me feel great. I also eat healthier now than before. I don't eat like I used to. I rarely consume alcohol. I mean, I still do, but one of the things that I do is one of my um, things that I do with one of my boundaries is, I'll have a glass of wine when I'm with somebody. I don't do that when I'm alone. And I just don't crave the way I poorly coped. And I think it has a lot to do with getting healthy, learning about why I did that, and knowing that those poor coping strategies didn't work. It made things worse, and I don't want to go back to that. So I eat healthy, exercise, talk about my feelings, share my experience, and I've lost 35 pounds, which is great. Because when I put my bulletproof vest on, it fits a lot better. It's not as uncomfortable. Um, so yeah, I stick to that, and I don't forget where I came from, though. I don't forget the struggles that I went through. It was hell. It really, really was, and that's putting a nice word to it. And I'm very lucky. I'm very blessed to have been able to get through it and get back into law enforcement. And I got back into law enforcement because I decided to put myself first, because I decided, with the help of my sister, obviously, to get back into therapy, to get back on medicine, to start working on myself. And now I'm a captain, and it's great. And I share my experience, and I speak to our officers about stuff and let them know if they're struggling, they can always come talk to me.
And you said that you are a father. How has your relationship with your daughters changed once you started putting your mental health in the forefront?
I think the relationships between my two daughters, my youngest daughter is Peyton, my oldest daughter is Sydney, and they always know Daddy as a goofball. They're like, you could even be the president, you'd be a biggest goofball, huh? But I'm always open and honest with them about my feelings about stuff. And, even when I was struggling, there were times that, I was divorced at the time, so I would have the girls half the week, and I would tell them, Daddy's not in a good mood. I'm going to go in my room. If you need something, let me know. If I'm crabby, I'm sorry. It has nothing to do with you. Um, but they watch podcasts. They read a lot of the stuff that I write, and it's a really good open relationship. And my oldest daughter, Sydney, is gay. And we have a lot of conversations about, some of the stigma associated with that. And I love her to death. I don't care. I don't care that she's gay. She's still my baby girl. It doesn't matter. I don't love her any differently. And but I remember as she was growing up, just like I told her, I said, well, some people don't like Daddy because he's a cop and they don't even know me. Some people aren't going to like you because you're gay. That's just how it is, unfortunately, honey, but our relationship is really, really good. And my girls are coming to visit me in a couple of weeks, and I'm looking forward to it. So
I'm glad that you have your daughters, and I'm glad that you have a relationship that is mutual and open and the ability to share with them. I think that's very beautiful.
thank you.
And I'm glad that you're looking forward to seeing them. We're recording this in the past, so when it's in the future, when this airs, it'll be 2025. What are your year goals for 2025?
Continue on the path that I'm on now, to stay healthy, to exercise, save some money. One of the goals, I want to get some new living room furniture. I know some people probably don't care, but looking forward to that. But just continue to be healthy and continue to share my experience with people. Have good relationships with my daughters, my mom and dad, other family members, my friends, and the community. One of the things that we do at the police department in December of 2023 was I approached our chief and said, I want to do something for mental health, and, maybe something called Mental Health Mondays. And I wanted to do it like every Monday, we have a different story of somebody from the community. And he goes, well, why don't you try just the first Monday of the month? So we did that, and I'm glad I listened to him because it's a lot of work. But January through December of this year, we have had different members of the community sit down with me and share their mental health journey with me. And we type something up. We share it on our social media. It gets published in the newspaper. And it's just our little part of kind of, building a rapport with the community and kind of letting people know that it's okay to talk about your mental health. And we talk with people who have schizophrenia and bipolar, and people who have been in jail for 15 years and that are convicted felons, and Yeah, it's to the point now that they're reaching out to the police department because they want to share their experience. And that's what we want to do. We want to bridge that gap. We want people to know that, mental health, everybody struggles one way or another. So it's okay to get help. And by being in the newspaper, it also gives them a platform and confidence. And because there's a lot of emotions involved in that. A lot of members of the community, they say they want to do it, and then when they do it, they get really nervous, like, oh, I'm not sure. And I get that, but it's been great. It's Mental Health Mondays, the first Monday of every month, and I just hope and pray that it continues to be successful in 2025 like it is in 2024 because it's so important.
Mhm. My closing question to you would be, what do you think about the saying, I transmute my pain into purpose?
Oh, that's huge. I remember shortly after my shooting, I was sitting at a conference table at the police department, and I remember thinking, when all this is over, I'm going to share my experience. I knew right away I was going to do that. I didn't know that I was going to go through hell. I didn't know it was going to take years. I didn't know I was going to abuse alcohol and casual sex and marijuana. And it was a very, very tragic day. Um, Something that stays with me every single day, one way or another, I think about it. And I see that as I turned something negative, something traumatic, and tried to turn it around and do good by it. Try to turn it into a positive by putting myself out there, by sharing my experience in hopes that others will be inspired by it. And it was a really painful journey. And it gives me some relief to share my experience. And I think that's probably what you mean by that saying.
I think it's exactly what I mean. And everybody has a different way of transmuting their pain into purpose. Um, are you comfortable with sharing the name of the woman who lost her life?
I do. Her name was Melissa Abbott. Yeah.
I want to say to the family of Melissa Abbott, I'm so incredibly sorry for your loss, that her life is not in vain. I am very grateful that you, Adam, were able to share this um, horrible experience, but I'm so glad that it was transformed and transmuted into such a life-affirming purpose that I'm sure has helped so many in your community and will continue to impact so many lives for the better. And I'm really grateful for you sharing your story and being so open and honest with all of us. It is an incredible example for so many of us, and I'm sure that you will inspire so many more to share their stories and so many more people to be more open. And this will cause so many more people to feel comfortable with discussing these very uncomfortable experiences. So I just want to hold space in my heart for that loss, but also that joy that you're still here and that so many other people are also still here, because police officers do experience trauma in the line of duty and after. And I hope that this will be a catalyst that will create more laws in place to protect police officers and provide more resources for them and for their mental health.
Thank you, Grace. That really means a lot to me.
Thank you.
At the end of every episode, we spin on a wheel of emotions to learn a new feeling and how it correlates to trauma. Let's spin this wheel, shall we? Okay, let's see. Ooh. We landed in the surprise category. We have startled, shocked, dismayed. Wow. I mean, this is really something that correlates with this episode, right? I'm sure Officer Adam was feeling really shocked. I'm sure, and he told us that he was feeling very dismayed about what happened to the young woman whose life he took. Trauma manifests in so many different ways. The immediate response to anything traumatic is surprise, is shock. That jolt to our system of something that we were not prepared for, no matter how much you prepare for it, which officers do prepare for these life-ending and life-altering circumstances. And yet, there isn't enough advocacy for mental health when it comes to people that serve our communities. Now, whether or not you believe that police officers are deserving of mental health treatment, you're wrong. They are. They are deserving of it. Anybody who has experienced anything traumatic should get mental health care. Okay? And for us to support our police officers and for them to support us, they need to be on top of their game. They need to receive support. Good mental health and psychological health is essential for them to be able to serve our communities. And so it's not weakness to ask for help. I'm honestly shocked by how much we are so up in arms against those that are doing their best to serve our community. And I'm not talking about the bad actors. I'm not talking about the bad police officers, because I know there are them. There are some. I'm talking about the people who are trying their best to serve and protect their communities. They deserve to be supported. If you'd like some support, we have a Discord server. It's anonymous, it's free, it is peer support. Please join us via the link in our description. If you would like to support our podcast, we have a Patreon. Different tiers can get you a bracelet. That's a handmade bracelet made by me, Grace, or you can get a sticker like the one on the back of my computer. That link is in the description. Any support helps out the podcast so much. So if you feel compelled to, please like, comment down below if you'd like to see Adam on another episode, or if you have any experiences with police and with trauma, please comment down below. And please share this episode with your friends. And if you're watching us on YouTube, hit that subscribe button and like this video. I will see you guys in the next episode. Remember, you are capable of a fulfilling life in spite of your circumstances and your trauma. May you rise again from the ashes and be filled with peace, hope, love, joy, and understanding. I'll see you guys in the next episode. Have an amazing 2025. Mwah! Goodbye.